Cosplayers, what's the creepiest thing that has happened to you at a convention? Girlfriend cosplays as Wonder Woman. I go as business ready Darth Vader. Vader in a suit with a cape. We've gone to New Orleans Comic Con for the past 2 years. This year I did a Deadpool in a suit as well. The worst thing that happened was people saw her tattoos through the nude pantyhose she wore and would touch them without asking and then comment on them. She always took it in stride. "Hi, nice to meet you too," in a semi-condescending tone. I think the biggest things a lot of people miss is that a lot of these people lack social skills. They think life plays out like one of their games, chatroom roleplays, etc. They read hear stories about people hooking up at cons and think maybe I can get laid too. They hear chicks dig confidence, but they don't know what that is and just come across creepy. I am definitely not making excuses for these people, but I definitely understand. I used to be like that when I was 16 and someone finally pulled me aside and said, "Yo, that's not okay bro," and befriended me. I learned more about social interaction in a span of 4 hours than I had in my entire life up to that point. TLDR. Socially unaware people are still people, and some of them probably need someone to teach them how to not be awkward as frick. I was dressed up as Finn from Adventure Time with my friend, who was dressed up as a Dalek, both of us 13-year-old girls, while we were standing together so my dad could take a picture of us. Some random guy walks up behind my dad, takes a picture, then runs before he can turn around. I later saw him and his friends when exiting the con. They basically all did the same thing to various different girls around the con, which is creepy as heck in its own right, but creepier when the subject also happens to be underage. I feel like this is one of those situations where it's only creepy because the dude made it creepy. At PAX last year I saw people taking sneaky photos of people in costumes. It was weird because at the time the people were posing for a photo that I had asked them for. They could have just taken a normal photo. Had some creepy guy following me and my friend for a bit a few years back. We were stupid and agreed to go to his hotel room because he had a lot of booze. We noped out of there as soon as we were greeted by him, wearing just a dressing gown and telling us he was not wearing any underwear. Every time I've been to Expo I've always had a creepy guy try and get into my pants. I dress as mainly male characters so I don't even understand why half the time. However, I always find out they either have a girlfriend or are engaged. Apparently what happens at Expo stays at Expo. I also saw something at another time at the same Expo place. Dunno if it was creepy or not, but it just seemed freaking weird. At night time outside the Expo, there was a circle of people. One guy and girl in the middle with a lightsaber pointing to people to come into the center to make out with each other. Me and my friends were sitting away from this but could see exactly what was going on. Our hotel was close so we were just smoking outside. We had no idea how old the people were in the circle, but a few of the girls started to get naked, and someone's dad decided to call the police so the cops showed up. Actually yeah, it was freaking creepy because someone's dad called, so it must have had some underage people taking part. Also apparently someone had a taser and tried to attack the naked girls with it. Thank God for the cops in that situation. TLDR. I don't go to expos anymore, they are too crazy. What? I'm a photographer and I love going to anime cons because of the amazing diversity of colors and characters. Con goers love to pose for you. Once the camera goes up, they have been to panel discussions that have taught them to strike the pose. For photographers, this is heaven, not having to direct your subject, but I always ask permission before taking a photo, and every single request I have ever made has been happily granted, except one. One day at Otakon in Baltimore a few years back, I saw someone dressed as Renly Baratheon from Game of Thrones, and being a God fan, I was so delighted. He looked so good. He was in a crowd of other God cosplayers, but his costume was epic on target. He could have been a body double on the real show. I called out to him, "Renly, can I take your picture?" He began to respond yes, and stop for me, when suddenly Cersei grabbed him by the arm and snapped, "No, we have a photo shoot we have to go to," and dragged him away. My jaw dropped. He looked good, but she was so in character. What a true B. I still wonder, was that the real one? Well, she sure made her character proud. When I was 18 I decided to volunteer with my best friend at a Ren fair. In retrospect, I don't know what the frick I was thinking. I didn't have a lot of time to spend on a costume and it wasn't strictly historical. Kind of fantasy based. Again, in retrospect, I have no idea what the frick I was doing. So I ended up just wearing a pair of drawstring pants, boots, a hat lifted from a Link costume, and brought along a crappy LARP sword. I have long hair and a beard and was in good shape at the time, so I figured I'd fit in to some extent regardless. If anybody asked, I'd claim to be Conan or something. Note the lack of proper shirt. This comes in later. I was manning the gate, handing out pamphlets, when this woman easily 10-15 years my senior dressed like a fairy godmother started eye-fricking me from the end of the line. I was already kind of nervous because this event sat smack in the middle of the Venn diagram of crazy difficult people, Ren Fair attendees and large international convention crowds, and I had already had a few weirdos make passes at me that day. She gave me her ticket, took my pamphlet, paused for a moment, and then proceeded to run her hand down my chest, purr, squeeze my muscles, etc. And then leaned into me and whispered into my barely legal ear that I was the stuff that dreams are made of before letting out a little moan and groping my crotch. I was completely mortified, looked over at my friend who was standing opposite to me on the other side of the gate, before stammering enjoy your stay and turning to deal with the next customer. I thought that would be the end of it. Apparently I was naive. Later that day, once my shift had ended, I headed off to go and explore the park further. Wherever I went, I felt weird. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed, but chalked it up to being in the sun too long. Mid-afternoon I was in the main aisle of the fair when suddenly the crowd parted to let a supply car for the food tent get by. That's when I saw her. The gropey woman from before was standing off to the side, filming, taking pictures of me. I pretended I didn't see her and turned to walk round a corner, thinking she was maybe filming the crowd fair in general. She quickly turned to follow me, camera still rolling. Yeah, I noped the frick out of there really quick. TLDR. Teenage shirtless me gets felt up and photographed for an unknown period of time by a 35-year-old woman dressed as a fairy at a Ren fair. In 4chan there is a vid of 10 male cosplayers trying to dance around half-naked female cosplayer, creepy and cringy at the same time. I was cosplaying Mystique a few years ago, the black outfit and guns version, and I met this really attractive guy dressed as a character I liked. I followed him around a bit but he didn't seem to mind. Then a girl dressed as a guy from the same show started following us around for around 2 hours. I gave the guy my number at one point and he went to a restroom while creepy girl and I waited in a panel. I ended up ditching her somehow and met up with attractive guy later on. We've been dating for almost 3 years now. Me and attractive guy, not creepy stalker chick. We were waiting in line for a yaoi fanfiction panel because we had a free gap between panels and thought it would be funny. The girl in front of us turned around and whispered yaoi. We nodded. She then yelled yaoi way too loud with this massive grin on her face. The worst part was that one of our friends was in the same room and we were waiting for her. So even though we wanted to nope out, we had to wait and then run while the line was filing in. I had no idea these people existed. Imagine hearing it around the room till everyone is eventually chanting it. Sharing a few stories of my cosplay buddy. A few years ago at Tokyo in Tulsa, she was dressed as an Osi Akatsuki from Naruto and picked up a creepy kid that was hitting on her who was dressed as Sephiroth from FF7. He wouldn't let anyone else talk to her and was continually trying to impress her with his costume, which was amazingly sad. He kept claiming that it was real leather. It wasn't even pleather. It was crap vinyl and didn't fit. Obviously bought off eBay. And he thought he was going to win over my friend, an amazing cosplayer who does all her own work, by lying about his costume. Eventually he asked for her number and she refused to give it. He tried to force her to take his number by guilting her into it, saying how depressed and suicidal he was. At Tokyo in Tulsa another year, she was walking up some stairs in a fairly short skirt and a guy was bending over to try to look up it. He then tried to grab her butt, which is where I intervened, grabbing his hand and politely informing him that committing sexual assault on a probation officer was not a good idea. I was at a con and there was a weird guy who was taking pictures with all the girls. He could have just had Asperger's or something. but all his shots ended up with a real creepy okay, now me behind you shot that made the girls uncomfortable. They laughed about it later when they realized every girl in my group of 10 had met with him at some point or another. I was dressed up as a banana, and this impossibly sweaty man came up to me and told me how awesome my banana cosplay was. He awkwardly fist pounded me, then stared at me for 10 seconds or so without saying anything, then awkwardly fist pounded me again. He then broke into a peanut butter jelly time dance, which increased his sweating even more. He did every verse of Peanut Butter Jelly Time for probably about 2 minutes. He then fist pounded me a couple more times before I dismissed myself. Poor guy. I was cosplaying Rinoa, FFVIII, at one of my first conventions ever, at Anime Next 2003. I'm very into Soul Calibur, and I decided to enter the tournament and play against some people in a more casual context too. One of the security guards kept coming up to me when I'd sit down to play and start massaging my shoulders every time it was my turn. A big, creepy dude who was a great deal older than me considering I was still a teenager at the time. I was just trying to play and enjoy my game, and it escalated to a point where my then boyfriend actually had to stand behind me and say something to him. Apparently I was not the only person to have issues with that security guard that weekend. My friend and I were being followed by this guy in a Scream outfit, mask and all. He was just casually walking behind us when I noticed him and it startled me. He noticed of course and made it his mission to scare the crap out of us every time he spotted us. At one point I got nervous and just ran, and of course he runs after me and pokes me with his knife. It was pretty funny actually, but still kinda creepy when I think about it. Gen Con last year I was cosplaying as B from B and Puppet when Master Roshi from the DBZ universe comes strolling by after we all got out of a panel. While posing for pictures together he did what Master Roshi does best and just kinda rolled with it. Dude was polite and frick I didn't mind, but I guess that's the creepiest it's ever gotten for me. One time at a local con a man enthusiastically approached me to inquire about my cosplay, and kept complimenting it before I had the chance to tell him my blue-haired eccentric poppy style was my everyday, and I was in fact not cosplaying. He took my picture anyways and ran off. It was pretty funny. I have so many stories. I was hanging out with John Saint, John, voice actor of Duke Nukem, at Yaumacan a few years back. He and I were talking and walking around the convention center when he looked over his shoulder and yelled, "Oh crap, we're going to have to run if you want to continue this conversation." Basically it boils down to John being stalked by this dude at cons for years. It was an interesting experience. If it was said in any other context, it would have been creepy as heck. My first con I was dressed as Aris, and one of the volunteers was dressed as Hoyo. Met him earlier in the day, called him a terrible father. It was glorious. Towards the end of the first day I was so incredibly tired, and sat down on one of the couches in the hotel because my feet hurt and I started dozing off. He was in charge of preventing people from falling asleep in the halls because apparently this was a problem among many con-goers. So he came up to me and my friends and said something like, "Okay, you're adorable, and if you fall asleep here, I'm going to have to molest you." I jumped up and shouted, "I'm awake. I'm awake," and then shortly after decided to go home. He said it in a really exasperated tone, not like he was intentionally being creepy, so I laughed about it, like he was throwing his hands up in the air. "Welp, I'm just going to have to molest her if she doesn't quit her balls." Not the most creepy thing, but somewhat creepy. For the past several years, my friends and I have been dressed as the Yip Yips at Dragon Con. I have attended for 14 years, done a handful of costumes, but the Yip Yips definitely was the most fun. A couple of years ago, I wanna say 2012 con, we were making our rounds, doing our best to stay in character, and just having fun with it. Here comes the creepy part. We got our asses groped and pinched, and had multiple women just straight up grab our junk. Trust me when I say these. As for the butt grabbing, after a while you just stopped turning around to see who it was. The logic behind that was as long as you don't look at who did it, it was always a hot girl. That's about all you could do. Sometimes it was guys grabbing my butt, girls who couldn't be more than 15, or some biker looking grandma who was just looking for a cheap thrill. Aside from all this bitching about it, the experience of being a yip yip was awesome. Most people just loved seeing characters from their childhood and responded with some of the best compliments on our efforts. Not me, but a friend of mine was cosplaying with a group of her friends, all dressed up as characters from the anime High School of the Dead, and as you know, they are dressed as schoolgirls. Some pervert, donning a crudely made Jiraiya costume, fitting, I know right, was trying to inconspicuously take up skirt photos as he cruised around the stalls. When he came to their group, they quickly realized what he was doing and cussed him out, which resulted in him being escorted out of the convention. I played Lara Croft at a con a little while back, and I had a guy dressed up as Nathan Drake following me and kept accidentally bumping his penis into my booty. It happened about 6 times before I turned around and punched my fist into his crotch. Screw that. I am the president of Katsukan Entertainment, which runs Katsukan every year near DC. The creepiest we have come across security wise was a few years ago. A certain group of people had some kind of mass Twitter mob thing to assault one of our guests by asking everyone to grope her because she took a stance on don't grope cosplayers. As a result, we had to have security follow her around when she was outside her room. But thankfully, either we thwarted any attempts with our presence or the people who were making these threats were unmotivated to actually attempt this. And there was, but goddang, some people treat women with disgusting contempt just because someone doesn't want to be assaulted. I'm like, really? Is your life so pathetic that a powerful woman is a threat? Man up. For Christ's sakes. Nobody owes you a dang thing. Be human and take the time and the effort to be sympathetic to a fellow human being. At a Comic Con, I saw a girl who couldn't have been more than 15 dressed in a skin-tight leather Catwoman suit. She was being followed by a bunch of creepy old guys taking pictures of her. I mean, to be fair, she seemed to be very aware of the attention she was getting, but she was at our table playing video games and clearly she was still kind of a kid. Our table did our best to make funny faces in all the photo shots that these guys were taking of her naughty bits. Best photobombs ever. Oh yeah, I took this great shot of a teenager's butt. Is that guy picking his nose? God damn it, lol. At another con, there was this guy hanging out in a hotel lobby taking pictures of cosplayers with his travel camera, sporting obvious wood. I called security, and despite him saying he had every right to be in a public place like a hotel lobby, the hotel kicked him out anyway. Gross. This isn't strictly anime or a con, but it's kind of related. So a few months back, I was invited to this Lord of the Rings themed birthday party. It was like 90% Ren Fair people and almost everyone dressed up as something. Anyway, the night went on pretty typically. Everyone was getting drunk, and the Ren Fair people were doing what they do best, and making everything about them. Well, at one point in the evening, one lord and 3 ladies went out onto the back deck. In front of everyone, they started making out. This went on for a while before they realized they weren't alone. In a hilariously ineffectual way, the guy tried to drape his cloak over everyone. I still wonder to this day if he was drunk enough to think the cloak made him invisible. Anyway, after a little bit more of this, the host shouted, "Hey, if you're gonna frick, go upstairs to the loft." So, they did. Yes, a loft. An open air half floor. Everyone could still kind of see what was going on, and the noises were what you'd expect. At one point, someone dared me to bring them some pizza, so I grabbed a box and a 2-liter, marched up the stairs, and said, "Hey, I, gang. Cool dad here. Just wanted to see if you kids needed anything to eat or drink. Don't mind me." They did mind but didn't stop what was now a 5-person, 2 guys/3 gals, love-in. At one point, one of the guys dressed like some weird Prince of Persia Jack Sparrow mashup threw down a whole handful of wet paper towels. Wet with what, you might ask? I still don't know, but they hit the hardwood floor with a very wet splat. It was disgusting. Anyway, as the evening was winding down, a fella who went as Afro-Do was asking if anyone had seen his keys. I asked what they looked like and remembered seeing them when I went up to Banex Dow. When I told him, his shoulders slumped and he simply whined, "I just want to go home." So, being the Samwise to his Afro-Do, I steeled myself and took the stairs again. This time, they were a lot less forgiving. I tried not to make eye contact, or look directly at any bobbing bits really as I muttered out that I was looking for a set of keys with a Tron keychain. With an irritated grunt, they were thrown at me, and I was able to return the hero to the Shire. I'm not sure if anyone has posted this, but to me it is the single creepiest thing that happens when my friends and I cosplay, mainly because it happens every time without fail. Neckbutts taking the sneaky pic, as in, you're in costume, walking around, looking to buy stuff or whatever, and you hear a little click every now and then. You turn around and there's dude with his camera with the lens pointed at you. I think it's creepy because it is literally every single outfit, whether you're dressed as a cute sailor scout, to a boy, to a monster, it happens. If you try and confront the guy, he just blanks you and walks off into the crowd. The worst part is, if you ask for a picture, then the cosplayer is 95% of the time going to say yes. I mean, she's worked hard on her outfit, and probably has practiced the best poses and angles in the mirror, so you come away with a much more quality shot. Just ask for her consent XX. One time, in 8th grade, I was at a convention and the people I came with had locked their keys in the car. So, my best friend and I decided we would see if anyone had hangers we could borrow. As it turns out, wire hangers are hard to find. Anyways, we eventually asked these two huge guys with beards, and they were wearing all black and trench coats, and they said they have hangers in their car and we should go with them to their car. The thought of anything bad happening never crossed our minds. So we, two 14-year-old girls, follow these men to their car, which was in the back of the parking lot. They open up their trunk and there is rope and duct tape in plain sight. The younger of the two taps me on the shoulder and hands me a wire hanger. Then they proceed to teach us how to break into a car. After we got it down, my friend and I skipped merrily on our way. We found the people we came with and told them about our adventure, and only then did we realize the worst could have happened. It's not really creepy, just surprising. They were very nice men. Not really creepy, but it was probably the most mean-spirited thing to happen to me while in costume. I cosplay as a giant roll of toilet paper I created named Happy Paper. He's the mascot of my company and I run a booth at many conventions across the US. Generally people love him, and ever since I started cosplaying him in 2007 he's been well received. At this one convention, I was asked to come over to a line of people waiting for a panel because they really wanted to see Happy. I was thrilled and of course ran over and started dancing and interacting with people. I only have clear visibility when looking out of his eyes. Everything else is vague shadows because of the way the costume is constructed. All of a sudden something smashes into me and I nearly go tumbling butt over tea kettle. Turns out it was an ambush of sorts, so this kid could do a running ninja kick at Happy's head. I'm surrounded by pool inner tubes, so I wasn't hurt much, but wow. As I'm getting up, one person gets pee and starts yelling at the kid that it's a woman in the costume. I took it all in good fun and went back to the booth. Not long after that, the kid came up to me at the booth, pretty upset, and apologized over and over. He and his friends had just assumed it was a dude in the costume and they could wail on Happy without worry. I've organized and worked at a few events. I've not had anyone creep on me. I am a guy, so it's rare. I've seen a lot of things done to my friends. Worst I ever saw was when a London expo was double booked with an MMA expo on separate halves of a venue. Mostly it passed by fine, but in the evening some of the MMA guys became total meatheads. I know neckbeards are Reddit's favorite target, but it'd take the creepy guy in the background over the alpha male gym bunny any day. One guy jumped over a table to grab my friend's missus. He tried to pull her costume down. These guys knew they were 5 huge dudes, and we couldn't fight them on anything. God bless my friend. He stood up to them and gave them heck, and hotel staff dealt with the situation. I'm not a cosplayer, but I work for one of the major comic publishers, and so attend cons pretty regularly working our booth. I have seen some crap, both hilarious and disturbing. 2 that stick out from last year's SDCC. Some chicken cosplaying a slave Leia being photographed at our booth. Super creepy, and pretty old dude that was walking by just stops, looks her up and down, and just lets out this insanely disgusting yee followed by a series of sex grunts. I'm pretty sure he went and fapped in the bathroom right afterward. Really awesome. Cronin from Hellboy cosplayer was standing near our booth, and this chick just yells out as she walks by, "Frick Emmy with those knives." I don't know if he heard her, but it was freaking hilarious. I have gone to a few Star Wars celebrations and Comic-Cons. The creepiest was the person taking pictures of the women primping while waiting online at the bathroom, like peeking around the first wall at the convention center bathroom to get a pic of the scantily clad girls who are waiting to reapply makeup. I also had people ask to take my picture with my kid in it, which I respect. I have had people take stealthy pics of my kids, in costume or when I was wearing one in a carrier on my back and he looked like Yoda in Empire. I actually prefer people ask to take a pic of the kids. I think they are adorable, but I do try to keep their pics in our control. Not to me, but I have a girlfriend that likes to cosplay as Juri and Ibuki from Street Fighter, and she always gets requests to take pictures stepping on people's heads. Always. I tend to remember uncomfortably funny situations better, so here goes. I was a part of the staff at a convention last year, walking around in a costume, helping out with various things, etc. Since there were often several events going on at the same time, we were announcing those using a megaphone in the main hall. So there I was, inviting people to attend a presentation of some sort, when a girl comes over and starts undressing me, undoing the buttons and laces while I'm still in the middle of the sentence. I'm surprised, but finish the announcement, then turn to her and ask, "What the frick? What's wrong? How would you feel if someone were to randomly undress you?" Well, go ahead. Okay, that's not the weirdest thing I've heard from people in this kind of crowd, and I was still angry, so I didn't think much before starting to unbutton her shirt. About 10 seconds later a guy shows up, who turns out to be her boyfriend. Interestingly enough, he understood what was going on rather quickly. Probably not the first time for him, but I was a bit scared that he would flip out. The other thing that stands out in memory is when a girl I've never met before said, "You look like my dad," and proceeded to hug me tightly while shouting "Daddy." I wasn't particularly thrilled about that. TBH, I am not the body type for creepers, but I have 2 daughters who cosplay, both under 12. I just get crappy comments about how bad my parenting is, as obviously I am forcing my kids to cosplay. Oh, don't ever touch my kids, ever. I don't care about your sex, age or build. It's why one parent carries a weapon prop. My kids have perfected the stare till they cry look. But get too close and this will result in the parents hitting you under defense of the minor laws. Has happened twice. One male, one female. And don't think my hubby is going to take in a few years. She'll be just the right age body type, beating them off with the stick type comments either. On the whole, most people are good with them, but occasionally you will get someone who is a tad too close for comfort. My kid is an introvert, so doesn't do the whole ego thing. At a recent event she got followed about by 2 sweet kids, about her age. For a bit, hubby said, "What do you want?" and they went all fanboy and asked actual character game based questions, which got her talking, and they hung with us for a bit. Afterwards she did a bunch of photos with them and we say hello at other events now. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.